So, good morning, everyone. As usual, we'll start with prayers to help focus our mind, get our mind into a good state, a good motivation. And then we'll do a little bit of meditation on one of the recent topics.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one thus gone, full destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans too, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paved 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow, with pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme science, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate, protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field, endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the 4 faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable Holy Gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
So take a few minutes to settle down. Make sure you're comfortable, but try to keep your back straight and your body relaxed, not tight or tense. If there are any places of tension, you can just focus your mind there for a moment and tell yourself to relax. Imagine that tension melting and flowing away. And let your mind settle down in the present. Put aside thoughts of the past or future or other places, other activities. Try your best to keep your mind focused on where we are right now, what we're doing right now, this class. And renew the bodhicitta motivation you generated earlier. Or if you didn't do that, you can do it now. Think that you're listening to this class, these teachings on the Lamrim, the stages of the path to enlightenment, so that you can at least start creating the causes to become a fully enlightened Buddha, able to benefit all sentient beings without exception, helping them become free of suffering, become free of samsara, and reach full enlightenment, Buddhahood themselves. So really try to have that as your reason, your motivation for being here, participating in this class. So for the meditation, let's contemplate another of the benefits mentioned by Lama Tsongkhapa of cultivating wisdom, having wisdom as part of our practice of the Bodhisattva path, the Bodhisattva deeds. So he said that although bodhisattvas have immeasurable joy, they don't have the restlessness that distracts the mind from a focal object. And this is because of being endowed with wisdom. So first, think about the meaning of immeasurable joy. That is where we feel joyful about all the good things that are being done by all sentient beings, as well as their good qualities and even their happiness. Yeah, so even when people, other beings are experiencing happiness. Instead of being jealous of them, we feel joyful. We rejoice in that. But it's mainly about rejoicing in the good things they do, the good qualities they have. And this includes ourselves as well, not just others, but our own good actions and good qualities. So just think about the meaning of that state of mind. So that state of mind is it's kind of high, elated, and it could lead to the mind being overly excited and agitated, and then losing concentration, losing focus on whatever it is we're doing. So Lama Tsongkhapa says that wisdom can help to prevent that problem and keep the mind balanced and not distracted. So think about that and see if you can come up with how that is, that having wisdom, both wisdom of conventional things, wisdom that understands the conventional nature of things, as well as wisdom of ultimate truth, how wisdom can help our mind stay balanced and not get over the top in our joy. So what did you come up with? Anyone want to share your thoughts about how to use wisdom to keep immeasurable joy from getting overly excited?
I guess what came to mind was that it's not a personal thing. It's not my personal joy. It's joy at rejoicing in the virtues of everybody and kind of the huge interdependence of that. That it's not something to hold on to, but just really rejoice and share outwardly.
That's nice.
Also just thinking about how it's coming together due to causes and conditions. That's very grounding.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. That there are causes and conditions giving rise to those good qualities and virtue and so on. And causes and conditions can change. So that can help us. Somebody might be behaving really well at one point in time, and then later other causes and conditions arise and they're not behaving like that anymore. So keeping in mind that reality of dependence on causes and conditions and the impermanent nature of things can help us not go up and down, when someone's behaving well and then later not like that. So. Venerable Chinny.
I got stuck in answering in a question on then. So joy is for sure not an affliction. So that excitement that's arising is attachment or leading in that direction. I mean, what are we actually trying to antidote by applying wisdom there?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he doesn't, it's just like one sentence in the book. He doesn't elaborate on it. But I guess what I thought, my understanding was, when you are feeling that kind of joy, even though it is virtue, but maybe because of our habituation to the other kinds of joy that may not be so virtuous, but could be mixed with attachment, that maybe that could happen. But that's a good point. Getting overly excited and then attached. And I was also thinking that, our attachment, like to our spiritual teachers and so on, we feel very joyful about their good qualities, but then we can get attached to them and want them to be there forever and then get really disappointed when they're not there anymore. So that shows that there's, attachment mixed in with our joy, our appreciation of their good qualities. Yeah, so those are just thoughts that I had. Say Chen.
Venerable, I think that excitement is very result-oriented and that could be tied to attachment, because it's like you're looking forward to something, or at least that's the way it feels to me. So,
You mean ordinary joy?
Not ordinary joy, but I guess just that excited kind of joy. I don't know if that's part of the immeasurable joy or not, but it's like when I am just content creating the causes, and that's where my mind is in the happiness that comes from creating the causes and not just looking forward to something in the future that's going to come from it, then that's more grounding and more stable, because you can perpetually stay in that if you're just creating causes, because the result is there and then it's gone again, but you can always be planting seeds. You never need to stop doing that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also because the result is probably going to take quite a while. If we're talking about enlightenment, or even the first bodhisattva bhumi, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So yeah, just being content to rejoice in the causes, whether they're being created by ourselves and others, knowing the result, these are going to lead to the result, but without grasping at that, being attached to that. Did you have? Oh.
I think it just comes off of Zeichen's sharing, is that the joyous effort, if I can look at it as a long-term progression of the state of my mind, rather than I get excited when I think about just the happiness of this life, that I'm getting some sort of goodie, I'm getting some sort of benefit, I'm getting some sort of happiness for this life to make this self happy. Then it gets a little bit the exciting, the agitation, the expectation that this is going to continue. But if I look at it over the long term, that this is something I need in the middle, the beginning, the middle, and the end of my practice, then the whole cause and condition thing really comes much more alive for me, and that it doesn't have any essence right now in the moment. I'm just creating a progression of causes and conditions to make this be in my practice, hopefully for all of my practice life.
Thought about if it's for myself, if the joy is about something that's happening to me, then is that whatever is happening, is it mundane? Then to wish that, okay, may this then help to create the conditions, causes conditions for liberation and Buddhahood. And if it's for somebody else, the same, like if they are having food because they were hungry, and being happy that the people who are starving have some food, then that may they then have the nourishment of the Dharma, and then the mind settles. It doesn't become like, yay, they have these wonderful material things that sometimes I can forget, when you get some nice desire objects, that's nice food.
Yeah, bringing everything back to the Dharma. Good. Okay, thank you. Lots to think about there. So we are now about to start a new chapter, chapter 19, page 277. So we're embarking on this kind of big new section of the book, which is going into the last two perfections in greater detail, greater depth. And so this first section is just kind of general information about these topics of shamatha and special insight, shamatha and vipassana. Okay, so how to train in the last two perfections in particular. Training in the last two perfections in particular consists in methods for cultivating shamatha and special insight, because those two are included respectively in the perfections of meditative stabilization and wisdom. So the last two perfections, the names of those perfections. The fifth perfection is, here it's translated as meditative stabilization. Sometimes it's translated as concentration, samten in Tibetan. And so that's the fifth perfection. And then the sixth perfection is wisdom, prajna in Tibetan, and prajna in Sanskrit, sherab in Tibetan. So those are the last two perfections. So then when it comes to how to cultivate those, how to practice those, cultivate those, then there are these two practices called shamatha. here he's using the Sanskrit term shamatha. There's lots of different English translations for that term. Venerable uses serenity, and I'm sorry, but I don't like that term. It makes me think of Serenity Lane. Isn't there some drug rehabilitation program called Serenity Lane or alcohol or something? I don't know. It's just what I think of. That's used sometimes. I think Alan Wallace uses tranquility. And then other books, the one I'm most familiar with is Calm Abiding, which is actually kind of a very precise translation of the Tibetan term, shine. Shi means peaceful or calm, and then ne is abiding. There's so many different Tibetan, or so many different English terms used for this. It's kind of useful to just know the Sanskrit term, and then you can always go back to that. So I'll use that term, shamatha. So shamatha can refer both to the attainment of, the real meaning of shamatha is that attainment that you've been learning about in the Friday night class, which is, quite a high level of concentration. You're able to keep your mind focused on your object of meditation for long periods of time without distraction, without sinking, dullness, super, super strong concentration. So that's the real meaning of shamatha. But we can also use that term for the practice we do to attain shamatha. So it's okay to say, I am practicing shamatha, or I am developing shamatha, I'm meditating, I'm doing shamatha meditation. Okay. So even though you haven't yet got that attainment of shamatha, you can still talk about, that kind of meditation that leads to shamatha. And it's also in the Lamrim they also talk about the two main kinds of meditations. One is placement meditation or stabilizing meditation. That's meditation where you focus single-pointedly on an object, the Buddha or the breath or whatever, and you just try to keep your mind focused on that. So they call that placement meditation. So that kind of meditation is for the purpose of eventually attaining shamatha. And then special insight, or I think it's sometimes also just translated as insight. So the Sanskrit term for that is vipassana. And so again, the real meaning of special insight, this is a really high level of meditation where you've already cultivated shamatha, and then within shamatha, within single-pointed concentration, you analyze, you use analytical investigation of an object and eventually attain insight. And so that's like a high level, but you can also talk about doing insight meditation or, vipassana meditation, which is for the purpose of attaining that goal of insight. And so it's a little complicated, but as we get closer, and we go through this section, and also you're learning this and going through the 4th volume, Following in the Buddha's Footsteps. So you're having teachings on that, on these topics in that book as well. And I've noticed, I've become aware that like Vipassana, there's some people who think that Vipassana means Goenka meditation. And I think it's because, Goenkaji, he definitely practiced and then taught, developed this way of teaching, that kind of meditation practice. And there are centers all over the world, even though he's passed away now, but there are Vipassana, centers where they teach that kind of meditation practice all over the world. It's very, very popular and I think very beneficial. But because it's so well known and so popular, a lot of people think the term Vipassana means that particular style of meditation. They don't realize that, every Buddhist tradition has vipassana, but different ways of teaching it and so on. So it's good to broaden your understanding of that term vipassana beyond a specific kind of practice taught by Goenka. And basically it's analytical meditation. So again, we have these two kinds of meditation, placement meditation and analytical meditation. So to develop special insight or vipassana, we use analytical meditation. Okay, so then there are 6 points here in this section. The benefits of cultivating shamatha and special insight, demonstrating that these two include all concentrations, the nature of shamatha and special insight, the reason both need to be cultivated, how their order is definite, and how to train in each of them. So we'll get through as many of these as we can today. So first is the benefits of cultivating shamatha and special insight. The Unraveling the Intent Sutra, that's the Samdhi Nirmochana Sutra, teaches that all the mundane and supramundane excellent qualities of the Mahayana and Hinayana are results of shamatha and special insight. Someone might wonder, aren't shamatha and special insight excellent qualities of a mind that has attained a meditative state? How is it possible that all those excellent qualities result from those two? So this is kind of a hypothetical doubt or question that someone might have. If that sutra says, well, all the good qualities come from shamatha and special insight. But then shamatha and special insight themselves are really high qualities. The way I understand this doubt is does that mean we don't have any excellent qualities before we attain shamatha and special insight? If all the good qualities come from them, then what? That means we don't have any good qualities until we have them, because they are qualities of a mind that has attained a meditative state. And I couldn't find any explanation for that phrase, a mind that has attained a meditative state. But looking at the Tibetan, it says gom jung topegyu. And the term gom jung, you have these 3 kinds of wisdom of hearing, wisdom of reflecting, and then wisdom of meditation. So the third, the wisdom of meditation, is gom jung. Gom jung, gom is the word for meditation, gom, and then jung means arising from. So it's arising from meditation, but it's, strictly speaking, the wisdom arising from meditation is itself special insight. The union of special insight, calm abiding and special insight. So that's like a really high state. And so it seems to be asking, well, what about excellent qualities that might occur before that? So he answers the doubt by saying, actual shamatha and special insight are indeed excellent qualities of the mind that has attained a meditative state, as explained below. Later he'll explain this. Therefore, not all the excellent qualities of the Mahayana and Hinayana are results of the two. So he's acknowledging that there are excellent qualities that are attained before you've reached that state. And I was thinking, for example, immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion. So those are, or great love, great compassion, even bodhicitta. I think it's possible to achieve those before you have attained the union of calm abiding and special insight. Those are just possible examples. And then he says, nevertheless, all the concentrations that include a single-pointed mind placed on a virtuous object are included in the category of shamatha, and all the virtuous wisdom minds that individually distinguish the ultimate mode of being from things in their variety are included in the category of special insight. So he's saying all concentrations that include a single-pointed mind placed on a virtuous object, and here it does seem to be correct that it is a virtuous object. So I'm still exploring that. I wrote to one Geshe I know to see if he could explain the meaning of virtuous object, because that's still not clear. What is a virtuous object? What is the criteria of a virtuous object? But anyway, any concentration where your mind is focused on a virtuous object, those are all included in shamatha, and all virtuous wisdom minds that individually distinguish. And I have trouble with this translation. It's when it says the ultimate mode of being from things in their variety. Looking at the Tibetan, it actually, instead of from, it's or. So I think it's more wisdom minds that individually distinguish both ultimate and conventional truths. The term things in their variety, that's another term for conventional truths. So I think what that line is saying is, minds that are able to distinguish ultimate truths and conventional truths, knowing those two levels of truth rather than distinguishing one from the other. Yeah, so all virtuous wisdom minds that are able to distinguish the two truths are included in special insight. So Geshe Sopa's explanation of this is, I think, nice and clear. He says, all successful meditation requires some degree of meditative stabilization. There must be some stability for benefit to arise from any meditation, even if actual shamatha is not yet achieved. So in any sort of meditation practice is used as a means to cultivate virtuous qualities, we can say that those qualities depend on the cultivation of shamatha. So I was thinking, even if you just spend a few minutes or even 1 minute focused on some meditative object, some object like love or compassion or ethics, even just spending a short amount of time focused on some object that will help you generate a positive state of mind, then, that does help you increase your good qualities, and that can be included in shamatha. So even if you haven't reached that high level of shamatha, but just trying to have concentration on some virtuous object, some object that will help you to cultivate virtue, that can be included in shamatha. That seems to be what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying here. And then Geshe Sopa says, vipassana is insight that realizes the nature of reality. Any insight that distinguishes the relative or conventional and the ultimate nature of things, and any virtuous qualities that follow from such insight, is said to arise from vipassana. So even if we haven't reached that high level of attaining vipassana or insight, just being able to understand a little bit of, even if it's not ultimate truth, but conventional truth, like impermanence, that's included in conventional truths. And so that, little insight into impermanence, like your computer dying and getting some insight into impermanence, that can be included in vipassana. And then Geshe Geshe Lodin, whose book, The Path to Enlightenment in Tibetan Buddhism, I mentioned a few weeks ago. It's a really nice explanation. And so he uses the word similitude. I think I already talked about this before, but I'll read his actual words. He says, even before the attainment of special insight into emptiness, you need a similitude of calm abiding and special insight to be able to gain realizations of the stages of the path to enlightenment. We need to have strong concentration to develop any sort of Dharma practice, right? So while we're doing Lamrim meditations, we need to be able to keep our mind focused on our topic, or bring it back when it wanders away, to be able to get any kind of benefit from that meditation. And he said, at the same time, it is necessary to train in analytical meditation so that you have a clear picture of what to cultivate and what to abandon during your Dharma practice. You are already developing a similitude of calm abiding and special insight by alternating single-pointed and analytical meditations on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So that's what we're taught to do. You know, we do some analytical meditation on like precious human rebirth, and then when we get a little glimpse of insight into that, then we focus our mind on that insight and familiarize our mind with it. So he says, such single-pointed practice is the cause to attain actual calm abiding, and your analytical meditation is the cause to attain actual special insight. Yeah, so that's really nice to think that, you know, even now as we're starting or trying to meditate on the Lamrim, we have a similitude of calm abiding and a similitude of special insight. And by doing those practices, training our mind in those, then we're creating the cause to eventually attain actual calm abiding and special insight. And then he also said something really nice. He said, every being has the seed of calm abiding and special insight, because even animals have some degree of natural concentration and sufficient wisdom to discriminate between various objects. So even the kitties, our dear kitties, yeah? Yeah, we can see them. Unfortunately, they sometimes use their concentration in not so virtuous ways, focusing on that chipmunk or that bird, or their food bowl or whatever. But yeah, just to think that, yeah, every being, the seed of concentration and insight do exist in every being's minds. So everyone has the ability. I mean, they actually say in past lives, we have all developed these qualities. We've had calm abiding, we've had special insight, because we've achieved those higher levels of concentration, like the four jhanas, the four concentrations, and the four formless absorptions. We've even been up to the peak of samsara. That's what they say. So we must have developed these in past lives, and then we lost them, fell from those high states. So having developed them before, yeah, there's some seeds in our mind, some imprints in our mind to be able to develop them again. We just create the right causes and conditions. And he said that when we start to meditate, we soon realize how primitive our concentration and wisdom are, but by consistent daily practice, improvements are made step by step. And by constantly developing your concentration and wisdom, by alternating single-pointedness and analysis on the stages of the Lamrim, your concentration will develop into calm abiding and your wisdom into special insight. So that's encouraging. Then continuing, bottom of that page, it is with that intended meaning that all the excellent qualities of the three vehicles are said to be the results of shamatha and special insight. Hence, there is no contradiction. So even the primitive levels of concentration and special insight, shamatha and special insight, develop all the good qualities. The Unraveling the Intent Sutra also says, after beings have cultivated special insight and shamatha, they gain complete liberation from the bondage of negative tendencies and signs. The meaning of this verse is that negative tendencies are the imprints that remain in the mind stream and are capable of generating increasingly erroneous subjective states. So imprints like of anger or jealousy, attachment, and so forth. So we have those in our mind that can give rise to those afflictions. And then he says, while signs activate the imprints for perpetual attachments to erroneous objects. So I had some doubt about that translation. And in the Lamrim Chenmo, the bigger book, which often has, I think, identical statements. So in that translation, that that phrase says, signs refers to ongoing attachments to erroneous objects which foster those propensities. And that seems to accord more with Geshe Zopa's explanation of this. Geshe Zopa says, this expression, the bondage of signs, is the actual mental affliction that occurs when the potential, the imprint, the seed meets the conditions that enable it to manifest. So we have these imprints in our mind for the afflictions, and then when we meet with the right causes and conditions that trigger those imprints, then the afflictions arise. So that's the meaning of this expression, signs. So that makes sense, because then the negative tendencies in the signs means the actual afflictions and their imprints, the imprints that remain in the mind, even after your anger has died off. You get angry, and then you get over it, but there's imprints left in the mind from the afflictions, and because of those imprints, then those afflictions can arise again when the right conditions are there. So what this is saying is that the signs are the actual afflictions, like attachment, and let me read the next part. It says, instructions on the perfection of wisdom explains that the former, meaning the negative tendencies, are eliminated through special insight, and the latter, the signs, through shamatha. So shamatha removes the actual afflictions, and maybe remove is the right word, not like getting rid of them so they never arise again, but at least subduing them, getting your mind under control so it's not just constantly getting angry and having attachment and so on. So with shamatha, our mind gets really calm and pacified. And then it's special insight, especially special insight into the emptiness, ultimate truth, that eliminates the negative tendencies, the imprints. So by developing insight into emptiness, then we can gradually eliminate afflictions from their root, so they will never arise again, and even the imprints of them, so that, those are gone completely. And then it says, although those are the benefits of what are known as shamatha and special insight, statements on the benefits of meditative stabilization and wisdom, meaning the last two perfections, should also be understood as the benefits of those two, shamatha and special insight. They have the same meaning, even though they are not called shamatha and special insight. So the benefits of shamatha and the benefits of meditative stabilization are the same. Benefits of wisdom and the benefits of special insight would be the same. They bring the same benefits. And this term signs in some texts, like some of the philosophical texts, they use the term signs for the appearance of inherent existence or true existence. And I found in Geshe Jamba Gyatso's commentary to this section, he says the bondage of signs refers to seeing all phenomena as existing inherently and truly. The adherence to all phenomena as truly or inherently existing, and its imprints in our continuum are bonds that bind us. So these are the things that bind us. The bondage that we have are, grasping at everything as inherently existing, and the imprints of that remain even after we get rid of that grasping. After we get rid of ignorance, but there's still imprints. Those are the obscurations that prevent enlightenment. So those have to be removed by special insight. So anyway, that's like the main benefit, the highest benefit of cultivating those two is, you first subdue the afflictions in the mind so they're not just coming up all the time, all over the place. And then you are able to completely get rid of them, remove them completely with special insight. Does that make sense? Okay, then the next section is demonstrating that these two include all concentrations. The Unraveling the Intent Sutra says that all the limitless concentrations proclaimed in the Mahayana and the Hinayana are subsumed under shamatha and special insight. Therefore, since those who strive in concentration cannot investigate all its limitless manifestations, they should thoroughly investigate how to practice the epitome of all concentrations, shamatha and special insight. So I guess in the scriptures there are many different kinds of concentrations that can be developed, but there's just too many for us to be able to investigate all of them. And if we focus on how to cultivate these two, shamatha and special insight, then we will understand all those other concentrations and also probably be able to attain them if we wish to. So I don't know what all these limitless concentrations are, but I guess the point is we don't need to know all of them. If we know these two, then we'll know all of them. I remember when we were studying the Ornament for Clear Realization, there's one practice that's called the loftily looking lion. That's how it was translated. It sounds really interesting. But it's something that bodhisattvas have to cultivate and practice. And it involves, so it's said that bodhisattvas, this is in the sutra system, bodhisattvas have to develop all four jhanas, concentrations, and all four formless absorptions. They have to develop those states of mind, not to be born in those places, but to have those states of mind. And then they use those states of mind, those mental states, to focus on emptiness. And so this practice, I don't remember the exact details, but it's kind of like going, meditating on emptiness and going through all these 4 concentrations and 4 formless absorptions, up and down, really fast, jumping from one to another, where you skip over one, So the reason for doing it isn't just for fun, but they say it's to develop dexterity, mental dexterity, just being able to have and they do it really fast. So it's just to make their mind really, dexterous, but it's to improve their wisdom of emptiness, realization of emptiness. That's in the sutra system, and the tantra system is, that's another story, but that's not included here. Okay, then next is the nature of shamatha and special insight. Okay, the nature of shamatha is set forth in the Unraveling the Intent Sutra. Dwelling alone in solitude, you settle the mind within and attend to those very phenomena you have been reflecting on just as they are. Whatever mind it may be, since that mind of attention is continuously directed inward, it is called attention. Repeatedly placing it in this way, it becomes stable, and when physical and mental pliancy arise, this is called shamatha. The meaning of this is that if the mind attends to it continuously without distraction and stays on the object by itself, so that the bliss and joy of physical and mental pliancy arises, the concentration becomes shamatha. This will arise from merely keeping the mind inwardly focused on its object of visualization. That's a little strange. It's mikpa in Tibetan, or meek. So I guess it could be translated as visualization, but we usually think of visualization as something you visualize, like the image of the Buddha. But another translation is just object of observation or object of focus. So anyway, whatever your object is, whatever object you're using as your meditation object, being able to keep the mind focused on that without distraction. It does not depend on comprehending ultimate reality. So shamatha is, as you've been learning in the Friday night class, it's just being able to keep the mind focused on your meditation object, which could be the breath, it could be an image of the Buddha, it could be numerous other objects that were recommended in the scriptures. But keeping the mind focused on that without distraction, and you don't have to understand ultimate reality. You don't have to understand emptiness in order to have shamatha. The nature of special insight is set forth in the same sutra. After achieving physical and mental pliancy, you abide in that state and eliminate other aspects of mind. With strong resolution, you finally investigate the very phenomena you have been reflecting on just as they are, the object of concentration being an internal image. So special insight is mainly cultivated after or on the basis of shamatha. So you've already achieved physical and mental pliancy, and then you focus on whatever object you're meditating on and do analysis, investigation. And it says it's an internal image, so it's not that you're looking at things outside and analyzing them, but just an image in your mind of those objects. And then with regard to the images that are the objects of your concentration, any differentiation of the meaning of those objects to be known, any thorough differentiation, full investigation, full analysis, forbearance, acceptance, classification, viewing, and conceptualization is called special insight. In that way, the Bodhisattva is skilled in special insight. So there's a lot of terms there, and he only explains a few of them below, but I couldn't find any explanation of all of them. So he says here, differentiation is a differentiation of things in their variety. That probably refers to conventional truths, conventional truth. And thorough differentiation is a differentiation of the ultimate mode of being. So that would be ultimate truth. So you can be looking at things either in a conventional way, their conventional way of existing, or their ultimate way of existing, whether they're inherently existing or not. And then investigation is a coarse investigation, and analysis is a subtle analysis. So those other terms like forbearance, acceptance, classification, I couldn't find any explanation in any of the commentaries. They skipped over them. But anyway, the point is, we focus the mind on whatever object we're meditating on, and then do analysis of that. And it could be either analyzing the conventional nature of things or the ultimate nature of things. The Cloud of Jewels of Sutra says, Shamatha is a one-pointed mind. Special insight is fine investigation. And Venerable Maitreya also says in Ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, distilling words about phenomena, and there's a footnote to that might be helpful, because distilling is not very clear. So the footnote says, that is, a practitioner distills the words of scripture to a single word or impression and focuses on that in meditation. For example, impermanence. Okay, so you just focus on impermanence rather than a lot of other words and concepts about that. But this probably occurs after you have already studied a lot and thought a lot and have an understanding of impermanence. Then you focus on that. So that should be known as the path of shamatha. So that's what you do when you're developing shamatha. You don't do a lot of thinking using a lot of words, but you just distill something into one word and then you focus on that. And that's how you cultivate shamatha. While a full analysis of their meanings should be known as the path of special insight. So with insight meditation, you go into thinking and analyzing and conceptualizing in order to understand the nature of the object. And in reliance on proper stability, shamatha and special insight serve to place the mind on mind and thoroughly differentiate phenomena. This says that placing the mind in reliance on correct concentration is known as shamatha, and the wisdom thoroughly differentiating phenomena is known as special insight. Bodhisattva levels presents it just like that, and the second stages of meditation, that's Kamala Shila, also says, once distraction toward external things has been pacified, resting with joy and pliancy within the mind itself, continuously and naturally engaging its internal object is called shamatha. At the time of abiding in that shamatha, any thorough analysis of suchness is known as special insight. So I think, this is just an introduction, and then after this we'll get into the actual way to cultivate these two individually, shamatha and then special insight. So then I think some of these statements will become more clear. Instructions on the perfection of wisdom explains this in the same way. According to Bodhisattva levels, that's a Sangha's text, and instructions on the perfection of wisdom, shamatha and special insight can each have both the ultimate mode of being and things in their variety as its object. Therefore, shamatha and special insight are not differentiated by way of their objects. There is shamatha that realizes emptiness, and there is also special insight that does not realize emptiness. So, I remember for a long, long time, until I did the master's program, I always thought shamatha was all about emptiness. Yeah, because that's how it's explained in the Lamrim. When you get to the topic of special insight, they immediately start talking about emptiness and meditating on emptiness. So I just assumed you only meditate on emptiness when you cultivate special insight. And then it was only, it's explained in volume 4 how you can meditate on ordinary objects, like the path, the so-called path of mundane, what's it called, mundane? But anyway, this whole practice of, after developing shamatha and then contemplating the relative coarseness of the lower level, like the desire realm, and then the relative peacefulness of the next level, like the first concentration. So doing that kind of analysis on the basis of shamatha, and you develop special insight. So that's like very mundane. It's nothing to do with emptiness. It's just thinking, oh, the desire realm sucks, and the form realm, wow, so great, so wonderful. No wars, no corruption, no starvation. In fact, they don't even eat. Yeah, I don't know if that was mentioned, but in the form realm, you have bodies of light, so you don't need food to eat. You subsist on air and samadhi. So there's no need to have gross food, and we spend so much time and energy, right? Buying, we don't buy food, but somebody does, and growing the food, producing the food, buying it, cooking it, eating it, cleaning up afterwards. A huge amount of time every day is involved with that, with feeding this gross body. So in the form realm, you're beyond that. You don't need that anymore. Yeah, so you contemplate that, and in that way you develop or you overcome attachment to the desire realm. So you don't want to be in the desire realm anymore. You want to be free of that, and that way you you don't completely eliminate that kind of attachment, but you suppress it strongly so it's no longer active in your mind, and in that way you can gain that first concentration, the first jhana. And you can be born in the form realm if you want, or you can just use that mind, that very super powerful mind. But anyway, it's developed on the basis of using special insight, vipassana. But it's just mundane, not about emptiness. So so that's what he's saying here, is that there can be special insight that doesn't realize emptiness. But there can also be shamatha that does realize emptiness. Right? So if you do have a a good understanding of emptiness, a realization of emptiness. Doesn't have to be a direct realization, but a inferential realization of emptiness. And then you place your mind on that, you can cultivate shamatha. So you can actually cultivate shamatha using emptiness as an object, which is of course difficult because you have to have a realization of emptiness to be able to use that, but it's possible. So some people might do that. So anyway, the point here is the way to differentiate the shamatha and special insight is not by way of the object that is meditated on. Then in the last sentence of that paragraph, he says, also when the scattering to external objects has been pacified and the mind abides on an internal object, this is called shamatha, whereas seeing something special or superior is called special insight. So this is, how the two are differentiated. The meaning of shamatha is when you've stopped your mind running away to external objects. You've overcome the hindrances to concentration, and you can keep your mind focused on an internal object. So that's the meaning of shamatha. And then special insight, this translation, seeing something special or superior, I don't know if that's correct, because it's usually explained as it's superior seeing. It's seeing in a superior way. And when I look at the Tibetan, that does seem to be more the way it's, rather than an object, it's not a superior object, but rather it's the mind that is seeing that object in a special way or in a superior way. So I think does that make sense? It's more a superior way of seeing, a special way of seeing. Lak, the term lak, laktong. Lak has that kind of sense of being superior or special. So that's the way they are distinguished. Okay, so then he says, some claim that the mind abiding non-conceptually, or we could also say non-discursively, is maybe a better translation, without a vibrant clarity of cognition is shamatha, whereas if it does have a vibrant clarity, it is special insight. But this is not correct, because it contradicts everything explained above, and because this distinction is merely the distinction between concentration with or without laxity. So it seems that in Tibet, at Lama Tsongkhapa's time, there was this view, this idea that he's explaining here, that if you just stay in a non-conceptual, non-discursive state of mind, then if it doesn't have vibrant clarity, it's shamatha, and if it does have vibrant clarity, it's special insight. So, and this may come from Hashang, that view that, just stop all thoughts, don't think about anything. Stay in a state of mind without any thoughts, and that's the way to realize emptiness, get to enlightenment. Okay, and then he says, this is also because every concentration of shamatha must definitely be free of laxity, and in every concentration that is free from laxity, clarity of the mind will definitely arise. So he's debunking that view of what is shamatha and special insight. And he says, thus to identify, and again, I have some doubt about the way this sentence is translated. It says, thus to identify whether a mind is a concentration or a wisdom that observes emptiness, you must check whether that mind realizes either of the two selflessnesses. So the way it's written here, it sounds like if you you're trying to figure out if it's a concentration or wisdom that observes emptiness. You must check whether that mind realizes selflessness. But he's already said above that you can have concentration that realizes selflessness, as well as special insight that realizes selflessness. So I think the way that maybe a better translation would be thus to identify whether or not a mind is a concentration and that's in the Tibetan it's and not or, is a concentration and a wisdom that observes emptiness. So you're trying to figure out, do you have a mind that's realizing emptiness? Is it a concentration and a wisdom that realizes emptiness? You must check whether or not that mind realizes either of the two selflessnesses. So I guess that's selflessness of persons or selflessness of phenomena. So in other words, it's the object. You have to check if your mind is actually realizing selflessness, emptiness. That's how you determine if it's a special insight. You're trying to figure out what is a mind realizing emptiness. It's not whether or not there's clarity, as some people believe. This is because there are countless non-conceptual concentrations of bliss and clarity in which the mind is not directed at the ultimate nature of an object. So, you might remember when Sarko Rinpoche was teaching, and he mentioned there was a time, I think it was kind of early in his life, when Lama Tsongkhapa was able to meditate. He could stay in a state of samadhi for a long period of time. I looked it up in his biography, and it says he was staying in some monastery, and when the assembly would recite the Heart Sutra, he would sit there and meditate. And even after everybody finished and left, he'd still be sitting there and meditating, kind of leaning against a pillar. And that pillar, became really famous. The pillar that Lama Tsongkhapa rested against while he was in this, deep state of meditation on emptiness. And then the way Sarko Rinpoche said it was, he said, it seems like he thought he had realized emptiness, but later when he was communicating with Manjushri, he asked Manjushri if he had realized emptiness, and Manjushri said no, and then told him to go and study with Rendawa, and also to study the texts of Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti and Buddha Palita. And then so that Lama Tsongkhapa embarked on that investigation, and then finally did getting the realization of emptiness. But yeah, in the biography it says, it's a footnote actually, that Lama Tsongkhapa would do that kind of meditation that was popular at that time, where it was thought that you just stop thinking, stay in a non-conceptual, non-discursive state of mind, and that's emptiness. That's a realization of emptiness. So he did do that practice for a while, and he probably did feel, maybe he did think that was a realization of emptiness. Then he goes on to explain more about this. So he says there are countless concentrations of bliss and clarity in which the mind is not directed at the ultimate nature of an object. So you can be concentrated, you can experience bliss, you can experience clarity, but that doesn't mean you have realized emptiness. And he says, it is established by direct perception that it is possible for a mind to apprehend without discursive thought, but not find the view that realizes the ultimate mode of being. Okay? So you can be in a non-discursive state of mind, but that doesn't mean you've realized emptiness. Therefore, there is not the slightest contradiction in the arising of non-conceptual concentrations that do not understand emptiness. From that point of view, when the mind is held for a long time, the power of the mind being so held gives rise to serviceable winds. So the winds, the energy winds in the body will change. Bliss at that time is not precluded, because when the serviceable winds arise, it is natural for bliss and joy to arise in the body and the mind. Once that has arisen, the power of one's clear sensation of bliss and joy produces clarity in the mind. So just by remaining in a state of concentration on an object, then because of the winds, then this gives rise to bliss and joy and clarity. But that doesn't mean you've realized emptiness. Therefore, you cannot posit that all blissful, clear, non-conceptual concentrations realize suchness. So that's refuting this view that was popular at the time and may also today. People think that. You just stop thinking, stay in that state for a long time, you feel blissful, you feel clear, and you think you've realized emptiness. That's the meaning of understanding emptiness. Consequently, since bliss, clarity, and non-conceptuality arise in concentrations that do realize emptiness, and since there are also many concentrations in which the mind is not directed at emptiness and yet do have bliss, clarity, and non-conceptuality, one must distinguish between the two. He's saying that just the presence of bliss and clarity and non-conceptuality doesn't necessarily mean you've realized emptiness. It could be. So it is possible that a person is meditating with those qualities in their mind and they do have the realization of emptiness, but no guarantee that that is the case. So I think he is, well, it'll come later, but he's really making the point that to realize emptiness, you have to go through a process of investigation, reasoning, like with dependent arising and so on. And then you can find the meaning of emptiness. And then if you focus on that, and you have bliss and clarity, non-conceptuality, then that is special insight. But if you haven't found the view, if your mind hasn't realized emptiness, then you don't have that kind of special insight. So this is a little difficult. I hope it wasn't too confusing, but I think he really wanted to make these points. So we'll stop there today. There's a little bit of time left. If someone wants to ask a question.
When you were talking about the signs, the bondage of signs, I think I got muddled. So at one point, I thought you said that they're the afflictions. And then another point, I thought it was the grasping at inherent, the appearances.
But that's an affliction too.
Okay.
So I guess there were different explanations. So one explanation, I think it was Geshe Zopa's, he used the term attachment. He said it was attachment. Where is it? Yeah, Geshe Zopa says the bondage of signs is the actual mental affliction. So it's when it's an actual affliction that has arisen in your mind. It could be attachment or anger or whatever. And then later I found something from Geshe Jamba Gyatso's commentary to this text, that it refers to seeing all phenomena as inherently and truly existing. So the ignorance grasping at inherent existence, which is an affliction, the root affliction. And the reason I brought that up is because that term signs, in some texts like Chandrakirti, Yeah, they talk a lot about signs, and the term, in that context, that term refers to the appearance of inherent existence. So, in this case, I think it could be any afflictions, but in some cases it's specifically the appearance of inherent existence and also grasping at it.
Thank you.
So it could have different meanings, different contexts.
Venerable, at some point you mentioned that afflictions leave imprints on the mind, and I've always thought of imprints being a karmic thing. Can you describe the difference between those?
Yeah, I think it's in volume 3. Volume 3 has a section about imprints and seeds. There's all these different terms, so I can look it up. If you don't, it's already time to end. But if you're not in a hurry. Yeah, if you want to read it, in volume 3, chapter 5, there's a whole chapter on afflictions and karma, their seeds and latencies. So it'll explain the difference between afflictions and karma, and then the kind of seeds and latencies they leave. That kind of terminology is a little complicated. I think the way it goes is seeds are latencies. They're a type of latency or imprint. The term imprint and latency, I think it's the same. So seeds are latencies, but there are also latencies or imprints that are not seeds. Like a seed, when you talk about a seed of an affliction, like a seed of anger, that has the potential to give rise to another experience of anger, just like a seed in nature. But then, even after we've eliminated all the seeds, as we progress, develop our wisdom of emptiness, the seeds can be eliminated. So there's no longer the chance, the possibility of experiencing the afflictions like anger. It's not going to rise anymore. But there's still imprints that are left. And those are the obscurations that prevent omniscience, or the cognitive obscurations. And those don't give rise to afflictions. Those aren't going to cause afflictions to arise, but they prevent, the attainment of enlightenment. And so they still need to be purified as well. So that's one thing I remember. But anyway, there's quite a bit of material in that section, chapter 5, if you want to read it. And the difference between seeds of karma and seeds of afflictions. Complicated stuff. Did you want to know what's about? So I guess we should stop here. Okay, so the next 5 weeks I won't be here, but there will be review classes. There's a lot of material to review, I think, from April on. So some other monastics will review. And then there's the Vinaya course. And during the Vinaya course, this class won't be happening because there's so many other things. So I'm not sure when I'll start teaching again, maybe the 20th. We have to check. But anyway, we have of November, 20th of November. 27th, so there's still things happening on the 20th. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's dedicate the merit, the positive energy we have created, listening to these teachings on the path to enlightenment with the wish to become enlightened, help all living beings. So let's share this with all living beings.
May the lives of the Venerable spiritual mentors be stable and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losam's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase